Alright, so I wanted to make a quick video. Don't have much time today. Been really busy with work and everything. Well, not work, but, the job to pay the bills. But I noticed so far on my channel that I've not really gone into so much the basics. I keep jumping ahead, but I suppose it's probably going to continue for these early videos, and then later on, as they progress more and more, I'm going to start making more individualistic videos, getting into all the different little topics and subjects, and hopefully that'll make each video shorter and more plentiful, etc. But I noticed that in the last video, I started talking about certain things without prefacing a certain subject. So that's what this video is about. This video is going to be about the various different cycles within the law of time, because I first want to say that within the Gregorian calendar, we have some sort of pseudo structure to it, aside from, the 12 months, which is irregular, and it's missing the 13th, so it's not a very structured or intelligent design. There is intelligence in the number 12, but when it's used in the Gregorian, there's no structure to it. But one thing that we can benefit from what we've been using is the 7-day cycle, which is the week, or just think of it in terms of all the various different cycles that we use in the Gregorian, the month, the day, the week, the year. All those things are used to sort of create a schedule or some sort of structure to our lives. And though, as I've said before, it's irregular and artificial, that's at least one way that we utilize time in our current calendrical system. So by understanding the other cycles of time which they've kept hidden from us, we can benefit from synchronicity more and more and more by understanding pattern and rhythm and how everything is essentially being structured, even down to the genetics and the way we should be meditating and the various different mathematical systems that go along with these things. But this video is just going to be a an introduction and just kind of going over the basics, and then later on I'm going to dive into each of these different cycles in their own video and go into more detail. So let's begin. First, we'll begin with, and these are mainly going to be all the cycles and the mathematical systems of the numbers that are associated with the 260 night-day cycle of the zulkin and the 364/365 cycle of the hob, or what I've called the song, and I'll explain that in a little bit. But just keep in mind that there are larger cycles that are composed of these as fractals, or these as fragments, which piece together like really, really long cycles that basically make up many, many generations and lifetimes, and basically constructs cosmic history. But we're going to keep it simple for now. This is what's relevant to our daily existence, our annual existence, and our lifetime existence. So let's just go into this. So first I want to mention, well, there currently is no term that anybody has put to this just yet. Jose Arguelles, I don't think, as much as I've studied, his teachings and his discoveries and everything, or anybody else, this is what we would call a day, or as what I've been referring to as night day, which, by the way, I'm going to be using the word day a lot, but every time I use the word day, just know that I'm meaning night day, because I'll get into the heliocentric imbalance in another video. But the 24-hour period that we experience is what we mainly call a day, like yesterday or the other day or 2 days from now. Like, we always say day, but the 24-hour period that we refer to as the day is also half night. Well, that depends on the time of year, but different ratios, it changes over time, but it's just as equally as important as a night as it is a day. So just keep that in mind. But I am just probably going to be using the word day just because that's how our, lingo and language has been molded, and it's just easier for now, but we'll get into all that later. Also, these different cycles are primarily based on a key number, right? And that number can not only refer to the 24-hour night-day cycle. So like whenever I refer to a 16-day cycle or a 13-day cycle, not only can these refer to days, but they can refer to weeks. They can refer to months or moons. They can refer to years or hobs. They can refer to zulkins. So don't think of these so much as daily cycles as just fractals of these various different numbers. So, but to keep it simple for now, we're just going to go into the daily cycles. So again, there is no term for this, but I just sort of intuitively generated one for the time being until something that makes more sense comes along. But just for this one and a few others, just because there's no other term, I'm coining things for lack of a better term. So, a num. So one num is basically one moon day, right? So when we refer to the 28-day moons, each day is what I refer to as a num, or you can think of it as mun backwards, like the Egyptian Amun, etc., or number. Anyways, it just refers to the 28 days of a moon. Or if you think of the 364 or 365 cycle, that would be 364 or 5 num. Now, essentially, this is the same as a kin, right? And kin is already established as what is its name. I didn't, generate a term for it. A kin is more referencing the zulkin day. So when we talk about each day on the zulkin, which is a kin, which is a combination of a lunar tone and a solar seal, that is a kin, right? And kin goes back to Kinikaha, which is the name of the sun, but it's not just the sun, it's also Luna as well. But so the only differentiation between a num and a kin is when I mention a num, it's more specifically talking about the day of the moon, which has its own unique properties within its 28 matrix and its 364 matrix, and a kin is referencing the day on the zulkin, right? And so basically a kin and a num are the same thing, but they're just referencing different matrices that they belong to uniquely. So yeah, and then we come into a 4-day cycle. 4-day cycles are, going back to the alchemical process of the red, the white, and the blue, and the yellow, or the rubedo, albedo, negredo, and centrinitas. These are important because they distinguish various different processes that generate a structure based on how certain 4-day sequences will unfold. In fact, the 4-day cycle repeats itself 65 times in the zulkin. So out of 260 days, there are 65 4-day cycles, and therefore the number 65 is important because it connects to many other mathematical systems, such as the 64 codons of the DNA plus 1, which is uniquely different. It is sort of acts as the zero or the generative core. So 64 and 65, they're connected. And so other ways that 64 is connected is with the magic square of Mercury, which is an 8 by 8 grid containing various mathematical codes with the number 64. Also, the 64 hexagrams of the I Ching, which describe various different changes that take place within the human soul and archetype. This goes much more deeper. I can't really talk about it too much in detail. As well as the mathematics of the chessboard, which also go very deep in terms of the human mind and the human soul. But the 4-day patterns or sequences basically just tell us how different days within those 4-day cycles will basically affect us and how we can perceive it in a different way. Like basically the first day, the red day, is a time to start new things, to be physical, to where we have a refresh of energy of the energy that we've converted in the last 4-day cycle. The white day, or the second day, is a time to be patient and to push on and to continue to improve ourselves. The blue day is when we can, or the white day is also a day of mental thinking, etc., and learning. Whereas the blue day is a day of emotional expression, a time of basically seeing things start to change. And then the yellow day of the 4-day cycle, or the fourth day, is when we see a ripening or the fruiting, and we come to completion on that general archetype of that harmonic. And each harmonic has its own archetype. So basically, this goes back to the 64 hexagrams of the I Ching, as well as the 64 codons of the DNA, as well as the 64 3-breath sequences, which can also be helped to utilize our understanding, and also a physical practice of breathing and meditation to help us attune to those different harmonics. So take, for instance, one hexagram is all about adventuring or voyaging, which is the one that we're in right now. Another one is a time of arousing your interest in learning, or another one is a time to be patient, or another time is to be caring and considerate and loving, etc., etc. So you see how important this is. And we'll make a separate video on that as well. And within the 364 matrix, or the Hob, or song as I call it, there are 91 harmonics. Now this is important because it breaks up the Hob into 4 seasons, right? And we'll get into that here in a minute. There are 91 4-day cycles. And again, this is a growing science. We're always figuring out more and more. So I have various different maps that correspond to the matrices of 91, but again, we'll get into that in another video. I kind of want to keep that on the down low for right now until I can crystallize it and bring it to y'all, because it's pretty exciting and profound. Now I get into the 5-day cycles, the chromatic cycles. These have more to do with the subsets of the 20-day cycle, because as you see, 4 and 5 multiplied together create 20. So you can think of a vinyl, a 20-day cycle, as 5 harmonics or 4 chromatics. These two, 4 and 5, are intricately connected. And again, I didn't mean to go into so much detail on the last one, but these are there are 52 within the zulkin. 5 times 52 is 260. This also contains the matrices of the castles, which I'll get into. And there are 73 within the 365 day cycle. So there are 73 chromatics in the Hob and 52 within the zulkin. Again, this goes back to the earth families, or the groupings of the 20 solar seals, etc., etc. These are sort of like, in the zodiac, what we refer to as the elements and the modes, or fire, earth, air, and water, and then cardinal, fixed, and mutable. But instead of it being 3 and 4, because it's a matrix of 12, it's actually 4 and 5. since we're dealing with a matrix of 20 solar signs, which that deserves a video all on its own, because 8 of the 7 or 8, depending on if you believe in Ophiuchus as a zodiac sign, which that also contains the secrets of the 13 lunar tones. But anyways, moving on. And then there are 7-day cycles. Now, these are the heptads or the septads, so to speak. These are what we know as the week, right? But instead of a word that is also synonymous with basically being injured or tired, like when they say a weekend warrior, yeah, that's got 2 meanings, okay? Like a weekend warrior or a weekend warrior. Anyways, so these are 52 in number within the 13 28-day moons of 364. And these are important in various different ways because they relate to the 7 chakras or the 7 radial plasmas, as well as the 7 breath sequences, etc. It's also deeply connected to the number 6, as well as number 8, but that is a very, very new piece of discovery that I haven't really unearthed yet. So, but I can detail quite a bit with its connection to 6, but we won't get into that right now. But basically, the heptad or the septad are the 7-day cycles, which, if you remember from my previous video with the gematria cipher, H and S both equal the number 6, so therefore these 2 words equal the same number, which is interesting. But it's like why we call it the 7-pointed star a heptagram and a septagram. But anyways, now we're getting into the 13 fractal cycle, which is the wave spell. The wave spell is very, very important because of how we've been conditioned to think about the number 13, as well as how 13 has basically been, brainwashed out of us. But there are 20 13 night-day wave spells within the zulkin and 28 in the hob. So, and I'm gonna make a video going into all 20 wave spells, and or I'll probably make a video on each one as probably starting next year. I'm gonna start doing I don't want to call them horoscopes, but basically divinings or readings as each wave spell unfolds, and I'll upload them like every 13 days or so, just to kind of give an idea of what's coming. But right now we're just getting into the basics and teaching people how this stuff functions. But again, the wave spell is a 13-day cycle within the zulkin, which corresponds to 13 lunar tones to 13 specific solar seals of the 20, and gives them certain energy patterns, which each of them have their own archetype. You can think of this again as like the signs and the modes, etc., or the elements and the zodiac, and how it gives different energy to time as it unfolds, etc. And these are super important, and they deserve multiple videos on their own. But again, going back to the 13 moons of 28 days each, you can think of it as 13 moons, for instance, like, of 28 days each, or there's a different matrix of 28 wave spells within the within the hob, and these 28 correspond with the 4-week structures of the moons, and that connects back to the number 7, which again, it gives different breathing codes for different wave spells throughout the year. So that's also important. And then we get into the number 14, which, as for lack of a better term, I just went with what it's currently called. It's a fortnight. This is important when it comes to the fractal of 260, which is 26. It's connected to the English alphabet. These are basically 2 heptads or 2 weeks. The fortnight is still fairly new with the terma that I, as a terton, am discovering. but we'll get into that more later on. But basically, there are 26 fortnights within the years, because if you double 14 and get 28, then you have 26 and you get 13. So basically these matrices are connected, but we'll get into that later. And these next two, these are essentially cycles within cycles and can't exactly be mapped by just given a small little multiplication. Like these two are deserve a lot more detail as well, but because they also contain various gap days as well, and there's just so much information there that it's gonna take a while to get into explaining it. But essentially we have a 16-day cycle, which by Jose Arguelles, he called it the Warrior's Cube Journey, but I kind of wanted to simplify that so that we can use it more easily in language and describing something. So I basically just shortened it to cube. It's the cube is the 16-day cycle, and this is connected to the Yellow Warrior. It's connected to pi. It's connected to telepathy. This cycle is all about breaking down the process of telepathy, and telepathy deserves many videos on its own. Telepathy is not just basically picking up like a radio antenna other people's thought speech. Telepathy is much more deeper than that. Telepathy is essentially the bridging or the medium connection of life forms to other life forms. So telepathy can, you can pick up on people's thoughts and feelings and vibes, etc., but you can also pick up on their negative energy as well. So telepathy is a very disciplined practice, and it deserves much more detail than I'm giving it now, but we'll get into that. And then you have the 18-day cycle, which this again is just as intricate as the cube, but for lack of a better, this one has no term, so I just called it a diamond. And just intuitively from mapping it out and understanding what it connects to, etc. So I just, for lack of a better term, I just called it a diamond, an 18-day cycle. But again, this requires a lot more detail to go into. This essentially maps out archetypal vinyls over the course of the year, giving us larger cycles to focus in on the galactic archetypes of the solar seals, etc. But again, I can't really go too much into detail about it. The vinyl is the 20-day cycle, and this is essentially also known as a harmonic run. It's going through all 20 solar seals. So we see, like, you can think of the solar seals as like the archetypes of consciousness. In fact, 16 out of those 20 are essentially going through the entire human archetype from the beginning of time all the way up to where we're at now. And the other 4, so it's like 16 is like the completion of the human archetype, and the last 4, 17, 18, 19, and 20, are sort of, it's like a cosmic consciousness of field, or like a matrix, because the last 4 solar seals are essentially different at the different, or what you would call the 4 pillars of nature. You have the earth, you have Luna, you have the sky or the oceans. They're kind of synonymous with each other, and I'll get into that. And then sun. So like these 4 archetypes are like sort of like collective forms of consciousness, whereas the other 16 are more about each individual. So again, like the vinyl is important because it goes through those archetypes, and we see how those things develop within us as well as other people and the collective over the course of time. And each one, for instance, again, there's vinyls that repeat throughout the hob, but it's again, it can't be simplified in one line of multiplication equation. But within the 260 Zulkin matrix, there are 13 of them. So again, we'll get into all the different details of each one of these over time as we hone in on one specific topic, and we're free to just focus in on that. But right now, again, we're just given an overview of the various different cycles, because I wanted to explain that before going further, I guess. The 26-day cycle is basically a, again, for lack of a better term, I basically just generated the words keynet. It's a keynet is a 26-day cycle, and there are 10 of them within the zulkin. And the reason why I gave it the term keynet is because it's related, as far as I'm aware, to the 26 letters of the English alphabet. I'm sure that it's, like all this other stuff, is connected to an infinite amount of various different mathematical systems throughout the cosmos. But as far as I've dug up right now, it's just connected to the English alphabet. And none of this stuff is by accident. There are no accidents and there's no miracles in this quantum universe. It's just that's the way it appears from our small little vantage point. I think that was said by like Dr. Manhattan in a Watchmen comic. Anyways, but everything is synchronized based on a higher mathematical order. And again, if you've not, if you haven't dived into the work of Marty Leeds just yet, then you won't really understand the significance of the English alphabet. But that's all I'll say for right now. And then we have the 28-day cycle, which is a moon. There are 13 of them every hob or song. And again, in my consciousness and my understanding from what I've found out so far, the moon is a name for the earth, because mun or mono means one, and that goes back to the one, and that is the center of our understanding of the universe, which is the earth, the heart, the terra, whatever anagram you want to give to it. But they are reflected by the white mirror, which is Luna, through the 13 lunations every year. And the thing about it is that, like Phi, the lunations don't, in the beginning, the lunations fall right on the first day, become full on the 14th and 15th day, and then become new again on the 28th and the first day. But over time, like Phi, they start to become slightly desynchronized, and they become either just the lunation cycles become either just a few days before, and then over time they start to sync back up, and then they become a few days after. But it takes thousands and thousands of years for them to go through this process to syncing right back up. So the lunation phases of the synodic cycle are not an exact synchronization with the 13 28-day moon. So I just want to preface that they fall out of synchronization just slightly, synchronize back up, and then go the other direction, and then synchronize back up to the center. So just a preface. But yeah, the 28-day cycle is important because it connects our feminine energy, and not just females but also males. It's attuning our the fluids, the water of our body, as well as allowing that to integrate with the other elements. And so that's where, in medieval times, they referred to the moonstrel blood, minstrel. They referred to it as moon blood. And so that's where you get the term blood moon, etc. It's connected to the not only the a woman's period cycle, but also the ovulation cycle. So it's really connected to fertility and human generation, etc., etc. But again, I got to go into a description of Luna and Moon and the difference between them. But again, the 28-day cycle is super important. This is why they've made videos like 28 days later, weeks later. just to, instill in our minds a sort of a mental association with horror movies and zombies, which is essentially closed-minded people that are carnivorous and etc., with the number 28, just like how they've related it, all this with the number 13. But again, it's too much to go into right now, but basically, yeah, the 28-day cycle is super important. But again, remember, all these numbers, all these cycles are really more correspondent with the number and not so much daily cycles. So again, 28 days can also be 28 years, 28 weeks, 28, etc. So remember that. And then we get into the 52-day cycle, which is the castle. Now, what's interesting is the castles within the Zulkin. There are 5 of them. And I just want to kind of go over this real quick because this is the main thing that I did not include in the last video before I went on and started going into more detail about it. But so within the 260-day Zulkin, there are 20 wave spells, 1 for each of the solar seals. And remember how I said it began with the first solar seal, Red Magnetic Dragon, Kin 1, and then it ended on Red Cosmic Skywalker, Kin 13, and then on Kin 14 it begins the next wave spell. That ends on Kin 26, which is 13 times 2, and then on Kin 27 that begins the third wave spell, Blue Magnetic Hand, and then that ends on 39, which is 13 times 3. And then on Kin 40, that begins the fourth wave spell, and that ends on 52. So the fourth wave spell of the Zulkin ends on Kin 52, because that's 4 times 13. And every set of 4 wave spells, which are also color-coded by red, white, blue, and yellow, just like the sequence of the harmonic, etc., And I can't wait to have all this out just so people can start to see how this all is orchestrated and how this basically is a perfect mathematical system. But so for every 4 wave spells within the Zulkin, you have a castle, because 4 times 13 or 4 wave spells equals 52, and a 52-day cycle is what is known as a castle. And within the Zulkin there are 5 castles, right? Because if there's 4 wave spells in each castle, 4 times 5 is 20, which is how many wave spells. Then that's where you get the red castle, the white castle, the blue castle, the yellow castle, and the central green castle, which is the 5th. Okay, so that's what I wanted to clarify from the last video. So again, we begin with the red castle in the east, the white, and then it's the white castle in the north. So the red castle in the east is constructed of the red dragon wave spell, the white wizard wave spell, the blue hand, and yellow sun. The white castle in the north is constructed of the red skywalker, the white world bridger, the blue storm, and the yellow human wave spells. The blue castle in the west is constructed of the red serpent wave spell, the white mirror wave spell, the blue monkey wave spell, and the yellow seed wave spell. And then the yellow castle in the south is constructed of the red earth wave spell, the white dog wave spell, the blue knight wave spell, and the yellow warrior wave spell. And then finally, to complete the Zulkin, we have the last 4 wave spells, which are red moon, white wind, blue eagle, and yellow star. And then after the yellow star wave spell, we go back to the beginning with the red dragon wave spell. And I'll also explain the courts later on, which are special wave spells. Save for the green, the green castle is just one big court of 52 days long. But what's interesting is within the Hob, or the song, what we know as the solar year, even though it's solar lunar, there are 7 castles, because, 52 weeks in a year, but at the same time, there are 7 52-day cycles, which correspond again to the 7 chakras, the 7 radial plasmas, etc., which are connected to breathing codes that we can utilize to tap into the synchronic order simply by doing meditations. And again, I can't wait to get into that either, because we need more and more people tapping into this stuff to bring it more into the cosmic consciousness. I have about 10 minutes left, but we'll kind of speed through this, I guess, at the end. But The 65-day cycle is what is known as a spectrum, and within the zulkin there are 4 of them. So you can think of it as like zulkin seasons, right? But the spectrums are, there's various different sorts of spectrums within the 260 matrix, depending on where you start and where you end. And this is something that I'm still just scratching the surface with, but we'll get into that. But basically, a 65-day cycle is known as a spectrum, and it also contains 5 wave spells, right? Again, going back to the connection with 4 and 5. But or 65 is 5 times 13, so it's 5 wave spells. But so you can think of it as a wave spell chromatic, whereas a castle is essentially a wave spell harmonic, or a harmonic wave spell, right? You could think of it as like that. See, that's what's so intricate and difficult about this stuff, is because it's infinite. This stuff is infinite, and you can always kind of look at it in a different way. But that's all I'll say for now, because I'm about to go. But and then again, for lack of a better term, we have a 73-day cycle, and this is also important because of how it connects to the zulkin, but we'll get back to that later on. 73 is a super, super important number. So as far as what I've synchronized with its cycles and what it connects to, which there are 5 73-day cycles within the 365 hob, or the 364 also including the day out of time. But I called it a gift, right? But again, I'll explain that later on. But so basically, 73-day cycle is what I've called a gift. So if ever in the future, if I mention the word gift, you know, if I'm talking about the timing cycles and I say, you know, oh, we're talking about 3 gifts, or, you know, obviously, you know, I'll make it clear if I'm talking about actual presents, but like Christmas presents, you know. But like, again, for lack of a better term, until I find something better, 73-day cycle is a gift. Most of these other ones have already essentially been labeled as far as the discoveries go. So, and then I guess out of all of these, the last one that I guess I can mention is a season, which is a 91-day cycle, but it's more than just a tropical season, because within 364 you have 4 91-day cycles. Therefore, a season of a year, as most people know with their Gregorian, they basically think of it as 90 days, you know, because, you know, dividing 12 by 4, you get 3 months, and months are typically, what, 30 days, typically? And 3 times 30 is 90. But within this mathematical matrix, 364 divided by 4 is 91. So, and if you, once I get into the map of this and how there are these 4 quarters of 91 within this matrix here of the 13 moons, right? Whenever I get into that and describe the details of it and how that corresponds to the Gregorian, you'll start to realize that this is, you can basically start to synchronize a lot of the Gregorian stuff back into the fold of this stuff, and also include more details, which this is basically sort of a preview of one big project I'm working on, which is synchronizing all the different facets of the Gregorian as well as the zodiac of the astrology, and basically bringing it back into synchronization and unity with the true model of time. And it's sort of like, oh, by the way, I'm a flat level earther, by the way, and anybody in the community, and you can go ahead and make fun of me if you're not you know, aware of that sort of thing. I'm not really a specialist, but you know, people are going to think what they want. I just go back to the Tao. But anybody who's in on the know when it comes to the flat level plane of Terra, T-E-R-A-H, knows that that is the true, or it's a more accurate model of the terrain in the oceans in which we live on, right? We don't know what the full thing is yet, but we know that we're not, we've scientifically proven that we're not on a flying space ball out in the middle of the vacuum of space and walking around on the edges of a ball and all that. You know, I don't want to get into it right now, but so basically anybody who's actually done their own independent research and asked questions themselves and looked into it will know that that is the true model of space, or the true model of, you know, the external world. But this right here, the 13 moons and the zulkin and all that, this is the true model of time. And also that the zodiac and the Gregorian are false. The Gregorian calendar and the zodiac is essentially the ball earth model of time. And this is the flat earth model for time, essentially, you know, just to compare it to something. So this is what I want to point out to people. But again, this is just a basics video of the various different sorts of cycles that take place. I don't know everything yet. I will not ever know everything at any single point in any of my incarnations. And I accept that. I move past it, but I can know something. So my goal over the next 10 years, if I'm still alive by that point, is to synchronize all this stuff and basically clarify the sky clocks of the wandering stars, or the planets, and the zodiac, and try to decipher what they're saying and how they've distorted it, and bring in the true model of because where I live in Houston, I live on a low topography in the suburbs, and I have no vehicle, so I can't travel to any place that does have a better viewpoint of the stars. So when it comes to the stars, I don't know much because I can't see much. But one thing I do know is numbers. And numbers are sort of like stars on the earth below, you know, as above, so below. So I can't really map out the stars and follow and track the stars, etc., the firmament. But one thing I can do is write numbers down on a piece of paper, right? And the paper is sort of the medium, or the firmament, and the stars are like the ink, right? So they're seeds in the soil. So I can basically uncover what's happening up there by using these numbers, because this is all I can do from where I'm at and what I'm limited to, what I'm trapped in. So I just want to clarify that right now. But again, I don't care to prove anything to anybody. I just essentially want to make people aware that the Gregorian calendar makes no sense. It does not make any sort of sense. And I used to follow the zodiac and the 12 sign astrology and all that, and it drove me crazy. Like, it literally drove me crazy. And again, that is for reasons that I'll describe in a whole video on its own. Again, I don't know everything, but I am aware that there is much more synchronicity in this. There's much more comfort. There's much more alignment. There's much more consciousness. There's much more... did I say synchronicity? Yeah, I'm talking too fast. But trust me, when you start looking into this and actually start, like, comparing it to the Gregorian and what they've told us for so long, you know, putting the horoscopes in the newspapers and shit of, like, Scorpio and Cancer, and, like, it's like, Cancer? Are you kidding me? Like, Cancer? They named a disease after that. And you're telling me that the feminine principle, which rules the moon, which is, I don't want to get into that, but is a crab? Are you telling me that? Like, what rules the breasts is a crab? And that, and I don't want to get into this right now, but, like, trust me, it's crazy. It's crazy. The zodiac and the Gregorian is crazy. Like, you gotta understand. But that doesn't mean that it is based off of a true model. You know what I'm saying? I'm not saying that the sky clocks of the wandering stars in the firmament and sun and lun, I'm not saying that those aren't valid and that there isn't a true model. I'm just saying that whatever the true model is, they have essentially stolen and coveted that knowledge from the ancient Mayans and other ancient civilizations, because this knowledge is actually present all over the world, right? And it's mainly centered around 13, right? 13 is a super important number. And you've seen what they've did. They've turned it into a 12 system, which 12 is important because if you look at, remember the resonance of 13 that I was mentioning in the last video? 13 is more important to focus on, because the 7th is, again, the 0. It's the center column, right? So the 12 is the body of it. It's the auxiliary parts, right? It's the support power, right, of that center. So yes, 12 is valid, and it has its own matrices, right? They're different than the center moon. So I just want to mention that. And we're in, I think we're, what is it? Yeah, we're on the 27th day of the resonant moon. So we're in the ripening process here. Again, I'm always going to be a student. I'm always going to be a seeker after truth and a novice acolyte, whatever you want to call it, a neophyte. I'm always going to be a beginner. And I'm glad that a lot of people always bring me back down to the basics, because I forget how simple it is. But I just want to mention that this is important work, and it's not finished, and it's not going to be finished ever. So in the meantime, by diving into it and uncovering it and bringing to light the structure of this clockwork, the more in tune we can get with ourselves and with nature, etc. And yeah, I mean, I guess that's all I'll say for now. But again, these are the various different cycles within the 260 kin zulkin and the 364, plus 1 day at a time, which acts as at 0, and or 365, you know, making it the 365 cycle of the hub, or the song as I call it. But again, I guess it doesn't really matter what you call it, as long as people understand what you're saying, you know, like. And anyways, that's all I'll say for now. I wanted to make a video to clarify this, but yeah. Have a nice day. Night. Day. Kin. Numb. Whatever.